If you listen closely, you might be able to decipher exactly what is happening here. If you can't quite figure it out, don't worry, you'll soon find out. Welcome to Nature Answers, rural stories from a changing planet. We explore stories of how communities in rural sub-Saharan Africa are working with nature to adapt to the climate crisis. I'm your host, Ivy Prosper. The sound you heard off the top is an example of how Kugzua, a rural community in Ghana, is fighting environmental change. They look to nature for answers to the poor harvests in their field. And what they did next created echoes across the region and attracted the attention of neighbors. Neighbors like Judith Atama.
I can say yes, we're experiencing low yield. I also tell my people that we are experiencing low yields and they should let us come to Kugzua to observe and implement composting so it can help us.
The drive to Kugzua from Ghana's capital is around 13 hours. The community is located in the northern edge of Ghana. It is a little more than 40 kilometers to the border with Burkina Faso. As you drive there from the south, the bustling cities and towns slowly become less populated. Eventually, the cities disappear entirely. Left are rural communities, populated with shade trees and sprawling farms. It is hot in Kugzua, but the heat doesn't stop the community from farming. They depend on what they harvest for their livelihood. But for the past 3 decades, they've been working against nature, not with it. The effects of climate change have made it much harder to reap a plentiful harvest. Crop yield has dropped significantly and has left farmers struggling to simply feed themselves and their families. To fight this, Kugzua turned to inorganic chemical fertilizer. This inorganic fertilizer was introduced by foreign aid workers. You'll hear them referred to as white men a few times throughout the story. These men assured the farmers that this chemical fertilizer would solve their low crop yield problem. But it didn't. Instead, it brought the community much larger problems. Abraham Abubilla Abuari, a farmer in Kugzua, has witnessed these issues firsthand.
The chemicals used to process the fertilizer is no good. At times, it brings diseases. At times, waste problems and even stomach pains.
Christiana Akparibo is another farmer in Kugzua. She noticed the same trend.
If I compare the days we were using inorganic chemical fertilizer, I realized our health keeps deteriorating. How we used to be stronger at certain ages, and we are no longer as strong as we used to be.
This solution turned out not to be a solution at all. We should note here that chemical or inorganic fertilizer is not necessarily dangerous. However, if it's not used in the right way, at the right time, and in the right amounts, it can prove harmful. Individuals need to use proper safety equipment to apply it. And if it's not applied correctly, it can lower soil fertility. Runoff can pollute water sources. And as the people of Kugzua know, it can cause sickness. The sickness brought about through the fertilizer was detrimental to the community's well-being. The high cost also made the fertilizer an unsuitable option long-term. And the results didn't actually provide farmers with a significant increase in yield. But with few other options, the farmers chose to stick with what had been introduced to them, the chemical fertilizer. But that didn't mean they stopped searching for a more sustainable solution, and soon one became apparent: composting. This is a podcast about nature-based solutions after all. A quick reminder that nature-based solutions are adaptation solutions that use lessons we get from nature to help both ecosystems and people.
We
use the stock from our farms, be it maize stock, millet stock, sorghum stock, rice stock, even soya beans, coupled with fresh neem leaves. That's what we use for the composting.
That's Moses. Moses Abubilla Abuari, another farmer in the area. And this sound might be familiar to you.
This one, you see, that is the composting. After we have built whatever that we want to put the waste in, we will convey the waste, after which we will dig the pit that we are going to use for the composting plant. And then first and foremost, we spread ash from the cooking homes. We spread ash on the ground inside the pit before we put the first waste. So when we put the waste up to a certain level, then we will get fresh neem leaves and also spread it on top of the waste. And then we'll sprinkle water. The process will continue that way, and then we will leave it. And every time we will come and turn it for a period of 2 months. We'll repeat the processes till we get to the season.
The ash and neem leaves deter termites who would otherwise disturb the composting process. The water is to help speed up the decomposition process. As people in Kugzua learned, when nature seems to have abandoned you, you can work with nature to fight back. Creating and using compost on farms was proposed by the Agric Station. Established by the Presbyterian Church of Ghana, the Agric Station's goal is to work as a supplement for governmental support to bring about food and income security in Ghana's north. While the Agric Station reintroduced the concept of composting to the community, the method wasn't entirely new.
When we were growing up, our forefathers were planting. When they plant, they will not apply anything, only the manure and the compost one. But now we are being enlightened and we are going back to our root.
Yet the solution isn't perfect either. Not everyone is completely sold on the idea. Here's Judith, who watched from next door.
There are discouraging remarks from those who haven't seen the results of composting. And they go like, how can you just keep waste and decompose it so that it would help you like the white man's fertilizer would do? Those are the kind of remarks they say.
And composting requires dedication.
Processing is stressful, especially when you gather the rubbish in the farm. Because whenever we are farm, we will sweep the entire farm and gather the rubbish. Carrying them from the farm to the house to do the composting is at times stressful because we don't have the things that we use to carry it.
Carrying the compost to the farm is hard, and it takes time. Like his fellow farmers, Abraham uses a bucket to carry the material. He walks a long time to gather the compost from the pit it is created in and bring it to his field. They're looking for more ways to make this nature-based solution even more accessible for farmers in their community and others. Yet despite this setback, composting proved to be a cheap, sustainable, and effective option. So Abraham and Christiana gave it a try.
The first time we applied composting, I was so excited because the yield we got from composting was so much better than what we used to get when we applied inorganic chemical fertilizer. When we applied inorganic fertilizer, I used to get about 6 bags. With composting, I can get up to 10 bags.
The results gave the community more benefits than they thought. Even Judith noticed the improvement.
But those who have seen it often said yes. Even after applying a small amount of composting, your crop will grow well for you.
The sickness, it disappeared.
But most of those who have stopped applying the chemicals on their crops, they are now healing. Most of them are healing because they have gone back to the natural way of planting. And that way, it heals a lot of diseases. Yes, because we are eating natural things. We are not eating any chemicals in our system.
And the soil slowly began to strengthen. Here's Moses again.
Unlike the white man's inorganic fertilizer, when you apply it, it doesn't add any strength to the soil. But with the composting, when we apply it, it's able to bring some other nutrients to the soil, and then you're able to use the same soil over and over. But it doesn't happen that way to the inorganic fertilizer. So I was happy to see the first yield from the composting.
The soil became more resilient.
The composting is drought resistant. So if you apply the composting and there's drought, the land still gets some moisture to help the crops. But when you apply the inorganic fertilizer in the crop, it will destroy it.
Now the crop yield is more than enough to feed the farmers and their family. Workers are also producing enough crops to sell in the market and make a profit for themselves, giving families even more financial freedom than they had before. Another benefit that no one could see coming, it has strengthened relationships and brought the community together.
People from nearby communities also come to learn. And through that, we have created some friendship relationship with them. And not only that one, we are our neighbors here. Whenever we are to meet and learn new things, as far as composting is concerned, maybe it will be a whole week you will not see somebody. But through that meeting or engagement, and you know how somebody is faring, it has helped in strengthening the relationship in this community.
Compost is bringing the community together in a way they never could have imagined. And at the same time, it is also pulling other communities closer.
I'm encouraging our youth who are going into farming to also adapt that system. Yes, because though it's stressful, the system is stressful, but it's very good because if you apply it on your crops, you yourself, you see the difference. So I'm encouraging them to take it up. And I believe time to come, the entire community will adapt the system. And very soon, we may get to a stage that there's no need of going to buy chemicals to come and apply our crops.
But as Abraham said, this solution isn't only strengthening a sense of community in Kugzua. As Judith watched from down the road, she soon came to try to compost for herself.
Manuel ane apanga Judith. Kamine yellow color.
My name is Judith Atama. I am from Jalakulugu and I am a farmer. I have come here to learn from the Composting Nature-Based Climate Change Initiative.
She's now waiting for the right time to give it a try.
It is not raining enough, so the grounds are hard and it is difficult to dig a pit we need for composting. But when it rains, the grounds will become softer and I will dig a pit to start the process.
The day after Judith spoke with us, torrential rain began to cover Kugzua and the surrounding communities. Judith will start composting any day now.
One thing we're sure composting will bring to us is that it would give us enough yield that we can feed ourselves and also our families. We have hope that we will get enough to be able to sell some in the markets too.
Judith is still trying to convince many in her community to harness nature to help improve their farms. But she herself believes strongly in the composting method.
I have seen those who are using the composting and how nice their crop looks. That's why I feel I can use the organic composting over the inorganic fertilizer.
The benefits that composting has brought means that Kugzua will be embracing this nature-based solution for generations to come.
We don't intend to stop. I intend to teach my children, even my unborn children. I will teach them. I will teach them and let them learn from it. We intend to continue using the composting method. Even when we die, our children will use it.
This is Nature Answers from Farm Radio International. You can learn more about nature-based solutions and the people implementing them by subscribing to Nature Answers wherever you get your podcasts. Find pictures of the people you heard from today at farmradio.org/natureanswers. You will also find transcripts and more about nature-based solutions there. You can also follow us on social media at Farm Radio. Do us a favor and share Nature Answers with your friends and family. We'd love you to spread the word. Until next time, I'm your host, Ivy Prosper, coming to you from Accra, Ghana.
This episode was written and produced in Ghana by me, Tamara Merritt, with support from staff from Farm Radio International's office in Accra, Ghana. Additional thanks to Jonah Grignon and Justin Fiacconi, who helped in collecting sound and additional content. You can listen to their episodes on land reclamation and forest conservation in this season. Live translations for Judith Atama, Abraham Abubilla Abuari, Christiana Akparibo, and the voice of Moses Abubilla Asa were provided by Abraham Abubilla. Judith Atama was voiced by Eunice Gakbeto and Christiana Akparibo by Jill Adinkra. Thank you to Quality Radio FM, who assisted with the interviews and were extremely welcoming upon our arrival. Further thanks to Rosamond Deheny and Bright Obeng, who accompanied my colleagues and me to Kugzua, and without whom this episode would not have been possible. I joined as part of an internship program with Carleton University's School of Journalism. This episode was edited by Tara Sprickerhoff and myself. Farm Radio compensated community members who participated in these interviews. It is a common practice to compensate a person in this region for the time they spend being interviewed. Our podcast would exclude many important perspectives if we only interviewed those who could afford to step away from their economic activities without compensation. Nature Answers was produced by Farm Radio International thanks to funding from the Government of Canada.